More reaction now. I'm joined by Professor Zwelinzima Ndevu from the School of Public Leadership at Stellenbosch University, and he joins us from leafy Stellenbosch virtually this afternoon. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We've had those results in, most of it not a major surprise, and it seems the Democratic Alliance very much voting for continuity as it prepares to take on the big national polls next year. But some might say that they did so at the cost of potential diversity in senior leadership, with not one black female making it into the upper echelons of the leadership of the Democratic Alliance. How did you read the outcome of these results this weekend?
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your listeners. It is indeed very unfortunate that while the DA has an opportunity to unseat the ruling party, they have not seized that opportunity. Because currently what we are seeing is that, as you indicated correctly so, it is a leadership that was expected, so none of the surprises, but it's also not a representative leadership. One would have hoped that in order for you to bring an inspiring leadership, in order for you to bring a leadership that will take this party forward and give it an opportunity to shoot to taking over the country, the leadership of the country, you would have expected to bring a leadership that is diverse, a leadership that is more inspiring to all sectors of our society. And I think this was a missed opportunity in that sense.
The party has had quite a volatile time of it, internally, especially over the last few years. And that's happened while we've had a national party like the ANC very much on the ropes. And there have been much criticism saying that there we have the ANC on the ropes, they're doing your hard work for you, and yet the Democratic Alliance has still not been able to grow or to really make headway against the ANC and really be taken seriously as a potential ruling party. So now they voted for continuity and they voted for stability. From a leadership point of view, a public leadership point of view, which is your expertise, how important is that stability then, if you are wanting people to see you as a party in a different light, see me as not just John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, see me as potentially President John Steenhuisen of South Africa?
We must remember that whenever you elect a leader as a political party, it must be a leader that is elected informed by what is the task at hand. And in this case, unfortunately, I do not think that the DA has read correctly what the task at hand. The task at hand for our people, for our country, is that they need fresh hands of leadership. They need fresh ideas on the table. A person that would be more enthusiastic in resolving our challenges, which are of energy, the economy that is declining, unemployment, and so forth and so forth. And what the DA has done now was to bring the same leadership and try to resolve problems that we're currently having in the country. I do not think that at that level, while you are trying to get stability, but you must get leaders that are fit for purpose. And I don't think that the leaders they've elected are fit for the task that we're faced within the country. Social cohesion, getting everybody to support one single vision. So if you are bringing a leadership that is not diverse, that is more representative, people will feel still excluded. And I might add that it might be that people inside the DA might as well feel excluded as well.
It's always difficult for political parties at stages like this, where they have to strike the balance between satisfying the wants of their card-carrying members and then potentially people who are not members of the party, but whose vote they potentially want to attract at local and a national level. Do you think that they had that in mind, or do you think that they were more inward gazing in stabilizing the party instead of really striking out and showing the rest of the country what they could potentially be in for if they elect the Democratic Alliance as, if not ruling party, but part of a ruling coalition?
I think the point that the Congress of the DA missed was that when you want to venture into this new space of challenging to govern, not being a strong political opposition party, but challenging to govern, you need to take risk. And some of the risks that they needed to take was to bring a leadership that would inspire the country, a leadership that would be representative of a country. We're currently seeing that they have decided on a male-dominated leadership. I think the country would be crying and saying, at this stage in our democracy, we really need people that are going to take us and ensure that there is diversity enough. While the stability of the party is important, I think they fail to balance it with the needs of the country. A person who's sitting in Mkanduli and looking at this leadership, would that person be able to say that my sentiments are represented by this type of leadership that you see here? A person who's sitting in deep rural Venda in Limpopo, would he be able to say that, is this the leadership that represents him or her? And in that sense, they miss that symbolic gesture that you need in leadership to not only act in unison or act in taking other people's view, but to be seen to be doing that through the type of leadership that we elect. And in this instance, I think this was a big miss. One was hoping that you would see that as a compromise, at least one would have expected that they would have passed the motion to elect a deputy leader and ultimately have a person of Mpho Phalatse's as caliber, for example, as a deputy leader of the DA. That would have shown some form of movement to inclusivity, some form of movement from what is the status quo.
I spoke to Solly Malatsi yesterday at the Congress, and he's now been elected as Deputy Federal Chairperson. And I got the very honest sense that he was a little bit frustrated with the lack of growth in the party for somebody like him, who's been a loyal member of the Democratic Alliance for the last 15, 16 years now, and yet was still being seen as one of the young guns in the party, who still is working his way up. And yet he has really earned his stripes in various positions. So when we talk about diversity, we also, especially if we look at the demographics and indeed the important issues in South Africa, the lack of youth representation is key as well.
Certainly, I agree with you. Would remember that Solly and his group that came at that time, joined the DA, was really the time when the DA was really reflecting the demographics of the country. It was moving to a trajectory where it became not only a white opposition party, but an opposition party that represents everyone in South Africa. We are more and more seeing the DA, when it stabilized itself, coming from its turmoil time to going back to its more conservative stance. It might be that they want to really certify their card-carrying members, the part of their constituency that is loyal to them also, that might feel that it is more represented by this kind of leadership. But as you correctly said, the biggest pool of voters in our country is young people, and many of them would feel that they would be represented better by people such as Solly Malatsi and many more that would have been given an opportunity. And not having youth representation, that might be something that might come back to bite the DA very hard at the later stage.
And of course, we then have to mention people like Siviwe Garube, who's their chief whip as well, and has been rather impressive in that position since she's joined it. But already there are whispers saying, oh, is she going to be looked after by the party? Will she be given the space she needs to thrive? Or are we going to end up with another leading light, a black female leading light in the Democratic Alliance ending up leaving for various reasons? I wanted to ask you about the importance of management style in a political party like the Democratic Alliance. Throughout the Congress, we heard a lot about their big successes at the municipalities where mainly they have been in charge. But those successes haven't been that big in municipalities where they've had to be in a coalition government, where they've been out-strategized often, or there's been gamesmanship where they've ended up on the wrong end since the last local government elections. And we've just heard previously from Dr. Levy Ndevu, who was saying that the Democratic Alliance seems to do better when they're the big brother of a coalition. But that's not always going to be the case. And we've seen that in the various metro governments, metro councils over the last few years. Now they're talking about their big moonshot for the union buildings. Do you think they have it in them to change their strategy and management styles to try and make a coalition government at national level work?
I think coalition governments are generally very difficult beasts to manage. They are very difficult. They are not predictable. From one space to the other, you cannot prototype or apply the same techniques. And that has been clear with the challenges that the DA has experienced through, if you look at the bigger municipalities such as Johannesburg, Gauteng, and Ekurhuleni, and if you look at local, smaller municipality where their cohesion have been more stable or not. And I think in most cases, the point has always been when they are not in charge, when they are not in command of what happens, they then get frustrated, and in getting frustrated, they alienate their partners. And that has been the biggest weakness of the DA, that they want to be in charge. They feel frustrated when they are not in control. When things do not go their way, they throw out all their toys. And they should exercise patience. They should give others space who they are partners with to also operate in the manner that those parties see fit. And if they can do that, they would be able to be successful more. But if they continue with wanting to be in control and controlling the direction of where the coalition municipality should go, I think even when getting to national government, it is going to be even more difficult as the dynamics are even more complex at that level. So they should now look at one province, one or two provinces, rather than shooting to union building, as I've had with Mr. Steenhuisen's victory statement or speech. I think for me, it would be realistic to think about a few other provinces that they can run in coalition with other parties. And maybe in 2028, they can think about the union building as they would be better prepared for that. And I don't think now, as things stand, they are better prepared for that at the management level.
One final question before I let you go. My colleague interviewed J.P. Smith shortly after those results were announced. He's one of the deputy federal chair people. And he mentioned that there was now a need for a peaceful road to the elections. That's what they're hoping for. Of course, he's speaking with an eye on the fact that if there were to be a transition of power, they want that to be peaceful. But just a few minutes before that, John Steenhuisen was at the podium and rather aggressively called out Julius Malema and the EFF quite a few times in his speech, very obviously wanting to cast the EFF and Malema as the bad guys, as the villain in the story that they're looking to write in the lead up to the next elections. So if you're wanting a peaceful road to the elections, or even a peaceful transition, if that's how far you want to look down the road, rhetoric and language like that is really going to be important for somebody like the leader of a big opposition party to keep an eye on.
That is true. We will remember that for a very long time, while they have been challenging a relationship between the EFF and the DA, but they've been cordial in how they deal with those challenges. We have heard Mr. Steenhuisen saying for the first time that the EFF would be the enemy number one in his speech. And that, for me, tells me that they are going to be very confrontational with the EFF. We know that the EFF, they will be playing to the EFF's game if they start being confrontational, because the EFF wants that. They've been trying to provoke them. And I think it's not in their best foot forward if they would to do that. What would work for them is to be a modest party like they always have been, and try and ensure that they win their non-traditional votes. And some of those electorates that they would want to win are staunch EFF supporters or people that are sympathetic to the cause of the EFF. And by being confrontational with the EFF, you are likely to alienate those constituencies even further. And that dream of shooting to union building might be a dream deferred in that sense. So my advice to them would be that continue to be cordial, continue to demonstrate abilities of a modern organization, as JP has indicated, and don't try to play to EFF's game, because you are likely not going to win.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insight this afternoon. Professor Zwelinzima Ndevu from Stellenbosch University joining us virtually from Stellenbosch this afternoon.